so I think people can hear me now. So I've got some questions, but I've not found most of them back.
Did you remember to write them back down?
I got all of 10 questions.
Nice.
But hopefully I'll just end up going off on tangents, so fill the time up.
I don't think we'll have to worry about that with me around.
Fair. So my first question for you is, how did you find out about FPVs?
Hit me with that one more time. I accidentally had the YouTube video playing. I just got a ton of feedback.
Right, so how did you find out about FPV?
I believe I originally saw it on Tested, actually, Adam Savage's YouTube channel. And I believe I saw, I think it was Sharpoo with the Tested guys, and long time ago, long before I got into it. And then I just kind of stored it away in my brain. And then I guess 4 Christmases ago, my best buddy Brad McManus FPV, sent me a quad, not an FPV quad. It was a Horizon Hobby line of sight rig that I was just blown. I mean, it had a PID loop, and I was just blown away by how stable it was in the air. And not too long after that, I got a Baby Hawk, and off to the races we went. That was my first FPV rig, and yeah, it just exploded from there.
Yeah, so you started off on a wee, lost quad. Now you're the king of 3-inch drones.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the micro world for like the first 2 full years before even dipping a toe into 5-inch rigs.
Miata. So second one I've got is, how did you meet Kristen?
Friend of a friend, actually. Way back when I was into airsoft, which was my main hobby towards the end of university and into living on my own. One of my friends through airsoft, one of the guys on the little team that I ran, was going to college with her, and he actually liked her, but she didn't. It was not reciprocal. And eventually, when he gave up, he said he thought, well, maybe she'll. I feel like she'll dig. She'll get along with Aaron, and so he introduced us. And for a couple years, she was still in college with Adam, and I would drive an hour and a half from South Jersey to North Jersey each way to go hang out with her in her dorm, and then eventually I would go up and pick her up and drive her back down to my apartment for the weekend. We'd hang out all weekend, and I would drive her back up on like Monday or Tuesday. And yeah, I was putting like 20,000 miles a year on my '96 Mustang Cobra at the time. It was hysterical. Good thing it got, like, believe it or not, it got 30 miles per gallon with a big old V8, just because it was a proper V8.
Proper cars didn't make them that anymore, do they?
Oh my god, yeah. Dual overhead cam. The block was actually made at Texid, which is over in Italy. It's the Ferrari plant that makes all their blocks.
It's one I found out recently. Ferrari's owned by Fiat.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
we cars also.
Very strange.
Mad. Right. One of them is got, because I remember you saying on a stream a while ago that you were going to major in music. So what is it you actually play or played?
So at about 9 years old, I believe it was, my parents put me into so before that, actually, my mother really had these dreams of before in school, in the schools that I went to, they would allow you to play stringed instruments before anything else. And so I started playing cello actually, and I hated how big it was, and it was just such a pain in the ass to move it around, that I decided to go to drums since they're a lot easier to carry. No, um, I just didn't love it, and then for whatever reason, I started to play drums, and it just kind of clicked. And my mother worked at the College of New Jersey, a great state school right by where we grew up, and right where I grew up, I should say. And she worked in the music department, and there was a drummer by the name of Tony DiNicola that was the drum instructor there, and he also did private lessons. And since they became friends and worked together, Tony offered to give me free drum lessons. And as it turned out, he was like if you Google Tony DiNicola, DeNicola, he's like a really famous jazz drummer that's played with. It was like sponsored by Slingerland, and like has played with all these jazz greats, and it's just hysterical that like it was just, to me, he was just Tony that gave me drum lessons every single weekend for like the better part of like 10 years. And yeah, drums took me. I mean, I played in a school, elementary school, middle school, high school, all the way into college. In college, by that point, I decided not to be a music major, but I kept doing like concert band and jazz band and any things that I possibly could for free credits, if nothing else, for being able to just do something that I found was really really fun. Um, and then took a big long break after that. Of course, learning to play with Tony was all drum set stuff, and jazz turned into funk, turned into rock, of course, as I went through middle school and high school. So I've played a million different styles of music, but always drum set stuff. And then towards college, you don't do much drum set stuff anymore. It's more like concert band. So it's a lot of like auxiliary percussion, and I did a lot of that. Marching band in high school, the whole deal. Music was my main hobby, pretty much up until airsoft, up until I picked that up towards the end of college, and then took a big long break. Didn't really play drums for a long, long time. I've been living in apartments, so I haven't really had the space for my big ass cock rock Yamaha drum set. Um, but yeah, I find other outlets. I find ways here and there to keep my chops from completely disappearing.
Yeah. That's one that I've found is one of the things I've found is that drum players are some of the fittest people you'll ever find in a band, but just because of the cardio and arm strength that you just need to keep.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting. It's and although I'm sort of trained in jazz, which is more about using your wrists.
Yeah.
I used to get yelled at for like breaks if I would use my shoulders, if like I would rotate my shoulders into it. Tony would be like, no, 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 what are you doing? And he would reach over with the sticks and kind of get me, and just basically force me to bring my elbows down, which forces you to play only with your wrists. So I had my wrist strength was crazy from drumming, weirdly.
Fair. It's one thing I found with quite a lot of different styles of music, there will be a different way of playing. Like, it's all the same thing, but you can get somebody who's like an extraordinary metal guitarist, but can't
Sure.
play jazz or blues.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One of my friends
Yeah, it
was
is interesting.
it's one of my friends who's one of the best guitarists that I know cannot play any metal stuff because all he's ever done is jazz and blues music.
Right, right. That's funny. Yeah, jazz is interesting. Jazz is such like a foundational type of music that I feel like if you can learn to play jazz, you can kind of learn to play anything. That was certainly true for me. I was I've always just been able to like pick stuff up, and just like any type of music, I've always been able to just dive right into it, and within a couple measures be able to just lock in and be super comfortable, and away we go.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the other things I've found with the guitar is, well, especially metal, is you'll like your arms will develop in completely different ways, because one arm is, well, you got your fretting hand, which just bounces up and down, but one arm will stay stationary with your
Right,
hand
right.
just going for your wrist, bending at the speed of light.
I can totally see that. Yeah, that's funny. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in my the peak of my metal was in high school. I met a really good guitar player who was super into Metallica, and he sort of introduced me to Metallica, and we had a little three-piece Metallica cover band that we would jam out every so often, um, and we had a really good time. Never did any. I've never actually gigged other than like with concert band, jazz band, stuff like that. I've bounced around like in my personal life between bands, and I've never really stayed long enough to actually gig with anybody. Um, but yeah, that was the height of my metal. Was high
Yeah.
school. Grew my hair out and everything.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I'd love to play in a band one day. I just don't.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Admittedly, actually, you know what? I have gigged out. I lied. I worked for a company called Disc Makers after college for 7 or 8 years. They're a CD manufacturing company, and everybody that works there is a musician of some sort. And our Christmas party every year, we would rent out a venue, and then all the in-house bands would just jam all night long. They would have a big set list, and like it was they organized it and everything. But yeah, every year I would get together with the other sales guys. I was in sales back then, and every year we did Zeppelin cover songs one year. We did Black Sabbath cover songs the next year, and yeah, it was just a blast. Every year we would pick somebody else and rip them off and do a terrible job playing their a couple of their songs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've actually come to think of it, I've gigged at Live at the World Cafe in Philadelphia, which is a semi well known venue.
That's it's one of these things, isn't it? It's just that I feel like it'd be the type of thing that it's a very, very nerve wracking thing to do, and then it'll just, you know,
It can be. Yeah, it definitely can be. I'm sort of lucky enough that from a very young age I was in these school bands where once a semester or once every other semester for Christmas, or we would have concerts, and it would force me to get up in front of an auditorium of 100, 200, 300 people. Um, and I was always I mean, because I was taking private lessons, I'm sure I was always somewhat competent, like one of the better drummers. So there would even be situations where I would have like solos and shit like that, to even further like just force me to figure out a way to cope with it. Which is it's interesting looking back. Like it's on one hand, like I look at that and I'm like, man, what a nightmare. But at the same time, it's kind of like I'm really lucky to have gone through that, because it's I mean, in the rest of my life I haven't had to like worry about that, right? Like if when in those situations, Live at the World Cafe, it wasn't like, it was fine. I just went and did it, and I was like, all right, cool, that was super fun, what's next? Like, so it's yeah, it's nice to have had that beaten out of me, but at the same time it's like, geez, is that where my anxiety started?
it seems like one of these things that all the stress and anxiety comes before it. Then when you're on, you're just doing your thing, and it's just
Dude, I agree 100%. Absolutely. That's me with most things. Not all things, but yeah, most things. The 24 hours before is the struggle. As long as I can get through that, I'll be good to go.
yeah. So I've got some. That's one of the things that my mates have told me a couple of times, because one of my mates plays at a thing that we've got around TRA, and it's called Behind the Noise. And
Okay.
it's all the bands in the area can come out, and it's like a big, it's like the X Factor with people with actual talent.
Nice.
And
Sure.
Because what? X
We
Factor
call that
is
in the
different.
U.S. a lot of times we call that Battle of the Bands when it's like a more private like X Factor type thing.
Yeah.
That typically gets called Battle of the Bands. That's just sort of the nomenclature here in the U.S. that I see most often for those events. It's fun, great musicians at those always.
Yeah. And then what we quite often find, like a few more of my mates have all done, went up and sang stuff at open mic nights.
Sure, yeah.
And they've told me that's like some of the most exhilarating stuff that they have ever done. Is the like you get up there, you're terrified, and then you just kind of do your thing. Then when you
Right.
get the applause at the end, I've heard it's like a big dopamine boost.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It definitely does a good job at easing the ongoing anxiety. And you're like, oh my god, it is a big. You'll never exhale harder than than you do after a big performance where there's people watching it live and they decide that you're not terrible. You
Mm.
did a good job.
Yeah. Right, because I've heard you talk about this one a lot. Why the Miata?
Because Miata is the answer to everything. There's a joke in the car community. Uh, Miata is the answer to everything, and what they're referring to is back in the forum days, um, on car forums, everybody that wants to get into cars would come on the car forums and say, "Hey, what car do I get? I want to go drag racing. I want to go road racing. I want to go autocross. I want to go canyon bombing. I want to go. I want to build a stance car, whatever it may be." And the inside joke is Miata is the answer to all of those things, because it's just it's a platform that's very lightweight. It's very simple, and it has and because of that, because of how good it is, basically, it has a huge aftermarket, and you can really build an extremely competitive drag slash track slash autocross slash whatever car out of the Miata. And you can do it cheaply, which was one of the biggest things for me. So I came from the Mustang world, which is again like a really cheap platform with a huge aftermarket, um, and did the car stereo thing for a while. Moved into like the car show ish thing and detailing and all that, and then quickly moved into more performance kind of stuff where me driving would be a part of the experience. It's because like with car audio and with show cars and stuff like that, it's just basically like who's willing to spend the most money on their car. And like I kind of got sick of that. I wanted there to be some like driver skill or just like some more of like a performance in the moment to it. So I started drag racing. These were back in my Mustang days. My first car was an '87 notchback, unfortunately 4-cylinder, but probably kept me alive, Mustang. And then my next car was a '96 dual overhead cam 4.6 liter V8 Mustang Cobra convertible, black on black on black. And
I mean, black always goes with
and
black, so.
yeah, exactly, and it's the fastest color. Um, and that got me into that was the first car that I started to actually do anything performance related with cars, which was drag racing, of course, at first. And after like a dozen trips to the track, that got kind of boring, and it turned into sort of the same thing, like how much money can you throw at the car to be able to go faster and be more competitive. Um, and that I had already sort of like been down that road. So I said, okay, what else can I do where it's not like that, where like driver skill is 90% of it, and then your budget is 10% of it. And that was when I found autocross, which is basically we find huge parking lots. We get permission from the owners. We have insurance. it's arguably the biggest motorsport on the planet, just because it's the most affordable and it's the most attainable for normal people. So lots and lots of people can and do participate in it. It's also kind of underground because it's not at a big fancy racetrack. Like, most people haven't heard of it because it's never going to be on TV, because it's a grassroots. It is a literal grassroots motorsport that's about the driving. It's not about the glory or the or the publicity or anything like that. And so we find these big parking lots, and then we show up. Well, the course designers, of which I became eventually, show up at like 5 a.m. with a trailer full of cones, and then we go out and literally build a racetrack. And the racetrack is different at every single event, which is one of the things that makes autocross so difficult, is that it's not the same layout over and over and over again. So you can't like just go every single weekend and within a year you're like an ultra ninja. You have to be able to come out, walk the racetrack that was built an hour ago, figure out what the fast line is, and then go drive it in anger. And what ends up happening is that since we're doing it in parking lots, we're not doing it in big multi-million-dollar racetracks. Everything is a little bit smaller. And also, in order to keep it safe, because anybody can go do this motorsport, you don't have to be a licensed racing driver. We keep the layouts so that you don't really get out of third gear, and we typically try to keep the speeds below about 80 miles an hour, which is very safe. Cars are very safe below about 80. So yeah, we never really have any accidents or anything like that, which is good. And it really benefits lightweight, small cars, which the Mustang is not. I spent a couple years with the Mustang trying to get it to work, and it was a great car to learn on, because it made me work really hard to make it go fast. So much so that when I bought the Miata after a few years of autocrossing, I picked up 2 Driver of the Year for all of South Jerseys in a row. I won my class both years, and it was just like crazy. And it was at the end of that I was like, all right, I gotta try something else here. And that's when I started instructing, and that kind of ran me down that whole path. Another like 8 or 9 years doing high performance driving instruction at autocross and track days.
Yeah, so it's kind of a. Well, it's what that reminds me of is when I was in Switzerland. They've got this one that's similar to that, but you're not allowed to spend more than, I think it's 700 francs on your car.
Nice. Yeah. I know exactly what that is. They had that on Top Gear at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget what that race series is called. Yeah, that's great. In the US, we have a couple series like that called the 24 Hours of Lemons. And then we also have a series called Chump Car, where they have like a $2,000 budget. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing. The over in Switzerland, that series, I think they ram each other a good amount. I think it's a pretty door banging sort of series. In the U.S. here, it's not that crazy, but there are some shenanigans that go on for sure.
Yeah, I'd really say that one's more like truck racing rather than car
Oh,
racing.
okay.
Because what they are racing cars, but it's like I don't know what it's called. No, like I think it's Truck GP or something. It's like
Okay.
massive
A lot of like
4x4s.
Volvos and station wagons and stuff, right?
Yeah, but
Yep,
these ones
yep,
are
yep.
like massive 4x4 pro grade racing. That is
Gotcha. That's
essentially a
super
Land
cool.
Rover on steroids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, motorsport is fun, but man, it gets expensive in a hurry.
yeah, so I've never
Whew.
really been able to get into the motorsports. But one that thing have really enjoyed is the top of the top end bike racing,
Okay, sure.
because like I love the idea it is what you're going faster than you can in a car with only like at most 30 inches between you and the ground,
Right.
and at least all of maybe a skid plate between you.
Right. See what's funny is the Miata is almost the motorcycle of the car world, in that It's incredibly low to the ground. It's incredibly inexpensive, and it's like it tends to be this sort of underdog at the racetrack, and you get that sort of same like yeah, I spent half as much money as you, and you're in my rearview mirror. It's got a lot of there's a lot of parallels I've found between Miatas and motorcycles, but Brad is a motorcycle guy, so him and I always talk about motorcycles versus cars. It's yeah, some interesting parallels. Motorcycles obviously have much better power to weight ratios from the factory than Miatas, though.
Yeah, I just love the idea of being on a physical crotch rocket and you're
Yep.
just speeding down 200, 230, 240 miles an hour.
Right. See, I think the in this country, motorcycles are pretty scary because like the the um the level of driving by normal people here in the US is pretty shocking and relatively appalling, to be honest. So riding a motorcycle in the US is like a death wish, and I mean it kind of is everywhere, but like specifically, like people just. Brad tells me about it all the time. Like, yeah, I was just driving down the street. Somebody pulled up to a stop sign, looked right at me, and just pulled right out in front of me, and I had to go into the opposite lane to avoid the guy, or I would have hit him at 80 miles an hour. I'm like, what is wrong? Like, people just, I don't know. In the U.S., like people just don't really pay much attention when they're driving, and it makes riding a motorcycle around incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's got to the point in that is, I've heard, at least in some states, if you're on a bike, you can legally go 5 miles over the speed limit so that you cannot get blindsided by a car.
That's smart, yeah.
And, well, one, at least in the US, they don't have it here in the UK and Europe. You can go out and buy a motorcycle of whatever calibre you want right out of the gate, as long as you have enough money. Here,
Oh, really?
if you is 17 to 18, no, 17 to 19, you can only get up to 125 cc's.
Yeah, we have something like that here as well. We have pretty much that same thing. Yeah, mopeds. You're able to get mopeds before you're able to get your driver's license.
Yeah, we can get a moped here as soon as you turn 16.
I think that's the same here. I think that's the same rule that we've got here. I always wanted one so bad, but my mom was just like, "Nope, sorry, bro, don't want you to die." And thank God she did, because with how out of control I got with cars, if I'd been introduced to motorcycles, I would probably not be here right now.
Yeah, no, it's one thing that I've learned from talking to people is that motorcycle racing is actually a lot safer than car racing is. Just because instead of you in 400-500 pounds of metal, it's you on top of something, and if it goes tits up, you're off.
Yeah, true, true. I'm sure there's a lot more injuries, but yeah, I can totally see that there'd be a lot less deaths.
There's a lot more minor injuries, but when you get up into the higher stuff, like all their suits, like their entire suit's a big airbag.
Oh yeah, right, right. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen those airbag up by your neck to keep your head under control. Crazy.
Yeah,
And then the rest of the suit too now. That's so cool.
yeah, and it's what I'm not sure about the in car racing, but I've I've seen that motorcycle racers tend to be a lot tougher because what Valentino Rossi went and won world championships in MotoGP with a broken ankle.
I remember hearing about that. Crazy. I mean, that guy is like, he's like the Lewis Hamilton though. So I mean, I guess you kind of expect it from these complete ninjas.
Yeah, it's Valentino Rossi. I watched a good documentary on him a while ago. It was it's like he is the fastest, but unlike in car racing, after he's done, nobody cares. It's whoever's the fastest now.
Yeah, yeah, that is a tough part about motorsport. Is yeah, when you're relevant, and then when you're not, it's just like on to the next.
Yeah, and
Maybe you'll be an announcer.
it's got to the point that a lot of them, a lot of other riders have copied him in the way of he's got a sun on one leg and a moon on another leg, and he's got like a split coloured suit, and nobody had that. And then when he got up to the
Right.
top, everyone has it now.
That's funny.
It's just like people are just ganking his style because he's the best.
Right.
And I think he's the only person ever to get 160 wins. So I'm going to Google this because
I
he's
mean,
got.
he's. Oh yeah, no, yeah. I guess. I don't know. Would he be considered like the Lewis Hamilton, or would he be considered like the full-on greatest ever Ayrton Senna? You know what I'm
He
saying?
would be. Yeah, he would be the. He's the thing with world version of Senna.
Sure. Crazy. It's cool that we've gotten to see that in our lifetime. I think you're roughly the same age as I am, and we didn't really get to. My generation didn't really get to appreciate Senna. I was a little bit too young to really appreciate the genius of Ayrton Senna. It's cool that our generation has gotten to see Rossi.
Yeah. Well, I found that just here, he's got 9 Grand Prix championships. So he's won the entire thing 9 times.
Wow, crazy, unbelievable.
And I think I think he was waiting to this year to retire so he could try and get his suit number's 43, I think. And he needed 2 more wins. He needed 2 more wins to so he would have 43 wins when he retired.
Right.
But it was his suit number's 40 something. He needed 2 more to get to his suit number and wins.
Oh! I thought he was changing his number every time he won another one. Oh, that's funny. Trying to get to your number and wins. That's cool.
Yeah, it's just
That's
like
funny, man. The guys that are at like the top levels, it's like they have to like make their own challenges
little things to
to
make them
keep
play it.
themselves. Yeah, exactly. Keep themselves motivated.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I wish there was more of in motorsports is the at least like in the UFC how they've got all the conferences before it, and you just like fire shots at each other.
Yeah, the touring car series are usually good for that. That's one of the reasons I really like to watching British touring car, um, because yeah, it's a lot. It's like that. I mean, that like Jason Plato and Matt Neal have like practically had fist fights, and like yeah,
Yeah, I've
super
seen
fun.
ones where people have been like picked up and thrown off stages just because
Right.
some of them take it that seriously. Then like the reason that Conor McGregor is such a big thing is because he's got crack. Like he is so funny,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like, he can just like improvise and just fire shots off at people with no effort.
yeah.
And if anything, it makes it better because now, because he's like way past his prime and all that,
Sure.
he's now got a team, and people think just because they're in his team, they've also got good crack, and they
Oh,
don't.
okay.
And it's just people try to be funny and just making a complete arse of themselves.
Right. That's funny.
Just because they think they're as good as him, and they're just
Right.
not.
Right. Yeah.
Mm. So another question here I've got for you is, what made you want to start, well, your live streams and, well, oh no, you answered that one yesterday, but JB did, didn't you?
Joshua Bardwell. Yeah. Although I don't know, I've been watching live streamers for a long time. For probably I don't know, probably about 10 years. I've sort of gravitated towards the long form content and just finding um, with live streams, I feel like you get to learn enough about the person where like you can actually um, get a little bit more than just small talk out of them, right? Like you start to sort of get into big talk with them, and I've always gravitated towards that. I really don't have any interest in talking about the weather or any other number of small talk topics. Um, I want to talk about the meaning of life or the hard stuff that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and I feel like the longer form content really is better suited for those types of conversations. And then yeah, Joshua had his live stream going, which I watched like religiously, and because at the time it was like the only real FPV live stream. And when he was down here in Atlanta and we were hanging out one weekend, it just happened to be right on top of when he was supposed to be doing his live stream, and he said, "Hey, you want to do it from here?" I mean, we worked this out prior to the trip, but yeah, planned it, did it from here, had an absolute blast, and he said to me like, "Look, dude, you're really good at that. Like, natural, just you're just able to do that. Um, think about that." And I didn't really have to think about it. I had such a good time doing it, and it's I was able to do it on my phone, right? Like I was able to really cheaply, um, and I just started doing it. I mean, it was just I wasn't doing anything different than I normally was, other than talking more, right? Because that's what a lot of these live streams are. It's just me doing the stuff that I need to get done here at my desk, while hanging out with friends. Uh, in a different way, right? With the camera and a mic on,
Yeah.
which changes things considerably. But if you force yourself to sort of ignore that, um, you're just hanging out. You're just hanging out and talking.
Yes. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh well, yeah. That's it. That is one thing that I found when I was trying to set up so that I could stream as well. Is that they've forced you to make a much higher monetary barrier for entry now, because see, unless you're eligible for monetization on YouTube, you cannot
Sure.
stream on mobile anymore.
Yeah, I remember that was a. I remember that being a hurdle. I was lucky enough where my at that point my YouTube channel was like 10 plus years old, because
Yeah.
I'd been making motorsport and car and mountain carving and all these random car related edits and putting them up and spreading them around, doing the same thing I do now, but without anybody looking at the stuff. Which that's the way that it goes on YouTube. You don't just start a YouTube channel and people watch it. You start a YouTube channel and work for free for, in my case, 7 or 8 years, figuring out how to post stuff, how to edit, what people actually click on, where you can spread these, right? Like what Facebook groups you can link to them, or just different ways that you can get it out there to hopefully have people come and watch the things that you're pouring 10, 20 hours into editing. um, it's just sort of the name of the game. I mean, anything in life, right? You got to put a whole bunch of time in to get really good at it if you expect to be um, uh, successful. But success is such a tough word. But yeah, you have to put the time in, but you also have to make really good quality stuff. I mean, that's sort of the other thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, is that like, yeah, you have to not only just do it, but you have to focus on doing it really really well. It's not enough to just push the button over and over and over again. You got to learn the right way to push the button, I guess.
It's in it's in my eyes as if I don't enjoy this, if I do something and I stop enjoying this, no matter what it comes to, I'm not doing it anymore, because for this,
Yeah.
this is just, I'm doing this because I want to. The chances of me this ever taking off are 1 in 1,000,000.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, it is. It's an. I've been face to face with that a bunch of times, and it's tough. Burnout is a real thing, and it's you. That's one of the reasons for me that like I have to make it about me as much as it is about everyone else, and that's not a great like that's not great for marketing. Like for marketing and for success, it has to be about everyone else, and you don't really matter. You just have to sell out and do what everybody else wants. Uh, and I'm not willing to do that. Like if that ends up being the case with this, then I will happily turn this back into a hobby and get a day job, because that's just not the way that it's gonna need to be for me. Um, and I've been lucky enough to not really have that happen. I've been lucky enough that I do this the way I want, and other people like appreciate and enjoy that and are interested in that content. So I'm pretty lucky. I haven't had to work really hard on that, but I mean, there are certainly times where it's like, man, I mean, there are days where it's just like, I don't want to do this today. Like I just don't. And um, with self care, you know, those days you learn that you're allowed to just say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to take this entire day off. I'm going to sit in front of this PS4 and just rail away on Minecraft all day or whatever. Um, and then you wake up the next day, and a lot of times you'll not have that feeling again, and you can get back to kind of going through it. But yeah, it happens. It's a real thing, and you have to. It just hits you in the face, and you got to kind of decide, like, am I going to push through this, or am I going to let this? The other thing that helps me is like I'm so deep into it at this point that it's like, well, I can't stop now.
it's the time lost paradox or something. It's no matter how
Yeah.
pointless something is, at some point you're like, well, I've put yada yada many hours into this.
Yep.
I might as well just keep at it, innit?
Yep, I've gotten good at it. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
And
It's
yeah, most of the times it turns around, and you know, but I'm admittedly terrified of the day that it doesn't, the day that it potentially doesn't turn around, and you know, multiple days in a row, I'm just like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I haven't had more than 1 or 2 days so far, but in my career of hobbies, eventually that does happen. Eventually, with a hobby, I kind of get to a point where I'm like, well, I've kind of done everything that I think I want to do with this. What's next?
yeah. It's especially the way that YouTube is now. It's the see quite a lot of people have to just stop and sell out and do exactly what YouTube wants and not their own thing.
Yeah,
It's the only person I can name that is successful on YouTube and does their own thing is a guy called Critical, who
I
just
haven't heard
puts
of
up
him.
he just puts up videos of him just messing about with his mates,
Really?
and he's got what 4.5 million subscribers or something. He's got something wild.
Wow. Yeah, it's tough, man. It really is. But and it YouTube doesn't make the situation any better by really valuing quantity over
Yeah,
quality. It's something that I really think that YouTube needs to. I really hope that they look at, because yeah, it's this the it just doesn't value YouTube does not encourage you to make stuff. They encourage you to make stuff that's just good enough over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I don't think that's the way, especially for us, because we end up needing to like repeat stuff. You know, we end up needing to do like the same videos once every year for no real reason. Um, that's an interesting paradox.
the thing that I thought I was it's speaking about that Critical guy as well. He made a great video on it. There is no you in YouTube anymore. Like, see if you go on your
Yeah.
computer and log out of your YouTube account, and
Huh.
look
Yeah.
at what's there. It's all, you know, I don't know. I don't know anything about any of these talk shows, so I'm just going to say like Jimmy Kimmel or like all these big names that
Sure.
all have their talk shows. They're all plastered along the recommended, and
Right.
it's like every 20, 30 videos of them, you'll see maybe like one of the massive YouTubers like PewDiePie or somebody.
Right. Yeah, I remember the days of YouTube being 99% like just small little channels. And that's the YouTube that
What's the
I remember
golden age
loving
of
the
YouTube?
most. But I mean, you can't block progress, I guess. I mean, unless we move to another platform, but I don't think that's the answer. I don't know. YouTube is a very interesting place. They have an incredibly hard job to do, and it's interesting to see how they do it. Um, and I mean, it's never going to be perfect for everyone. They just have to try to make it as good as they can for as many people as possible. It's a they got a tough gig.
Yeah, it's but the only problem that I see with it is they've not optimized it for the small creators or even the larger creators that built their success on this platform.
Yeah.
They've optimized it for these people who've got 4 quarters, 4, 5 million pound
Yeah.
studios
Right. Right.
instead of the guy who's making CS:GO videos in his bedroom just because he can.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And they've also changed it so like, oh, what was it? This, I can't remember who it was, but they made a video that 100% of the proceeds were going towards the. It was a shooting at a church. No, it was a mosque,
Okay.
and they demonetized that video and they told him about it,
Great.
and it was because it was talking about a sensitive subject. It's like,
Sure.
yeah, fair enough, them's the rules. But then Jimmy Fallon uploaded something talking about it, and
Oh,
they threw
sure.
in mid rolls.
Yeah, I mean it's like I can't imagine working at YouTube and having to make that decision, right? It's like what's the right call? I mean it's like, yeah, okay, let's leave this up until God forbid it's something I don't know. It's we live in a world that makes things so much of a gray area, and it's like I try my best to see both sides of that, and just not like it's easy to demonize YouTube in that situation, right? But until we find out that entity or whatever had something weird go on, right? So it's like uh, you do it, right?
Yeah,
What's the right answer?
well, YouTube have just, well, even with the moving from watch, what was it? No, it was moving from the watch, views system to watch time. They've like completely destroyed all the animators because people that are spending 100, 200
Yep.
hours just in, a 5, 6 minute video now
Right.
cannot make money on
Right.
YouTube because they'll have one video a month
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's got a more. One video will have more effort than any of the big people like the Pauls or Rice Gum will put into a video. All their videos in a year.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's been a part of this sort of journey for me is figuring out like YouTube doesn't value my time, right? Like if I put 1,000 hours into a video, YouTube doesn't care about that. I mean, they don't know about it, but they also don't care about it, right? They care about the videos that people sort of gravitate towards. So it's been an interesting lesson in like figuring out how to balance these things, right? Like how to balance what people are going to watch, what I want to do, how much time I'm willing to pour into it. And yeah, for me, for whatever reason, live streaming seems to have become like the thing that that balances those the best, right? Like my enjoyment, um, an audience that's willing to support me, um, and something that's sort of allowed on on YouTube. But yeah, it's a weird balance, and it's something you have to. It's easy to like pour a whole bunch of time into an edit, put it on YouTube, and be like, "Oh God damn it, nobody's watching it. YouTube, you suck so bad." But like, it's YouTube is just giving you the platform, right? Like they're actually making this all possible. It's everything else is on you, and that's a hard thing to sort of own, and it's an even harder thing to figure out. And I think a lot of people really struggle with that when they try to go full time. I mean, in the last in the last like couple of years of this hobby that we've started to see people actually go pro. I mean, like the ratio of people that have made it versus people that have just disappeared forever is really terrifying. Um, and yeah, I think it's just because it's just a really tough thing. It's just a very tough thing to sort of balance. And there's none of us have had any past experience that can prepare us for it, right? It's like this brand new thing, and we're all sort of just stumbling through it, trying to figure it out. And it's yeah, the most stubborn will survive in a way.
Yeah, it's just one of these things that if you're not actually passionate about it and you're just doing it as a cash grab or something, right? It's not going to last because you can tell if somebody's not actually, like if somebody's making a video, no matter how good they are acting, if you can tell if they don't want to be there, it's easy to tell.
For sure, I agree. I agree. Yeah, that's and like I've had moments where I've kind of thought about like, oh my, like there's days that I don't stream, and that's why that like I typically will not just jump on a stream if I feel like it's not going to be good. Like if I legitimately feel like I'm not in a good place and it's going to turn, because I've made that mistake before. Like I've come on streams when I was sort of teetering on being in a bad place, and those are the streams where an hour into the build, something stupid happens. I can't get a wire down, and I just freak out, and I say, you know what, I can't deal with this, and I end the stream. And on one hand, it's like, well, okay, that's kind of humanizing me in a little bit, and I hope maybe people see that and feel a little bit better about when they have that moment when they're doing a build. So I typically leave those up, but at the same time, I yeah, I don't feel great about those streams, and I always like second and triple and quadruple guess leaving those public rather than pulling them down, because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing after 100 builds putting something on the wrong pad, or cooking a component and then acting like an 8-year-old and getting super pissed off in front of what could become 1,000 people, and just fuck this, I hate this, all right, goodbye.
I guess at the end of the day, you have got to keep in mind it's what you're cooking up thing. It's what 40, 50 quid down the drain.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true, very true, very very true. And it's, I don't know, I just I try to just think of it as a very human moment. If yeah, if you
Yeah,
haven't been there, then I'm very jealous of you, but I think most people have.
yeah. It's just the thing that I found right now. You've got to just stay passionate with them, because at the end of the day, even if you get 6, 7 million subscribers and making bits and bits every month, it is just a glorified desk job.
Yeah, yeah, dude, I rue the day. I hope to hell that like I want what I've got going on to grow a little bit more for sure. Maybe even like, but I think like, for example, like I think if it doubled from where it's at right now, I feel like that would be the perfect place to kind of have it level off. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that,
Yeah.
but that's one of the reasons that I don't go like totally crazy, like researching and learning all these ways to like be a better YouTuber and all these things that could make the YouTube viewership go up, because I just don't think that's the way. I think that my approach is to sort of use YouTube as a marketing tool, but that's sort of it. Um, and to figure out other, like, I want to have 10 or 15 different things that are bringing money in, so that if I lose a couple of those, I don't starve to death.
Yeah.
And yeah, just putting all my eggs in the YouTube basket just seems absolutely insane. Plus, yeah, I don't want to have a million people watching me live stream. Like, that's horrifying, and there's gonna be a lot of trolls, and I don't deal well with that. And so yeah, it's super interesting, but it's you just have to you just have to be on top of it, you know, like you just have to thinking about it in advance, and make a little bit of a plan, and just stick to it. And like you said, yeah, just if you do that, I feel like you're also going to sort of prevent burnout a little bit, because you're not just going to be putting all your eggs into this YouTube basket and just like obsessing over views and your analytics and all that nonsense.
Yeah, it's one thing that I think that, like, especially British people that do this are a lot more resilient to, people dissing them and all that, and like shouting hate at them, than American YouTubers. What I've found is, because that's what we do with our mates. It's like,
Sure.
here, if your best friend isn't the biggest dickhead, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. That's I think that's why I watch so much BBC television.
Yeah, and it's, well, the way the BBC
Here's
portrays it, it's all all of the BBC, even like the real stuff, is fake,
right.
because
Okay.
and they can't actually tell you, like, especially in the news, because the BBC's all government funded thing.
Right.
The government can just get, no, you're not talking about that, and that's it. It's like, you can't do anything about it.
Do you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia by chance?
No.
Okay. I'm very curious. What I'm interested in what British people think about American television. It's because when Kristen and I watch um, shows from the UK, there's it's so interesting. Like, we learn a lot about UK culture from them, for better or worse. But it's just interesting, the difference in humor, and it's I'm always very curious the flip side, because like when I look at British comedy, we both find it to be a little bit more witty, like definitely more dry, but just more thought out, and more witty.
Yeah, it's more of
Um,
a long form. It's like a long form
yeah,
bit. It's like, I've seen shows where, like, there'll be smaller funny bits at the end. Then you find out the entire show's just been one hysterical bit.
right.
It's like, they'll tell you all these stories, and then they'll all just add up into one thing.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas like with television here, most of it I feel like, and there are obviously some huge some shows that are not like this at all, but I feel like the majority of TV here is more just like quick, like grab people's attention, get their money, get them into the commercial, and just move on. Whereas like, yeah, it's sort of less about making something good, more about just making something successful. Those two words have completely different meanings to me, and I think a lot of people sort of don't. They've forgotten that in a way. You know, something that's good is very different than something that's good does not have to be successful, and something that's successful does not have to be good. I feel like that's a sort of an important thing to realize. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't.
Right, this is one, right. I can go off on a tangent for hours about this one, right? Aliens, are they or are they not real?
The U.S. government is supposedly they have to release Area 51 documents soon, I think. So maybe we'll know.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to be real. Whether or not they've been able to make their way here is a whole other story because it's hard to travel through space. But I mean, to think that there's not other forms of life out there is kind of insane,
Yeah, well, I think
in
the
my
question
opinion.
that we should be asking is not if aliens are real, because it's indefinite that they are, because of how many
Yeah,
planets and
yeah,
solar systems there are. The question that should be asking is not, is there life on other planets? Is there intelligent life on other planets?
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that's the much more interesting question. Um, I mean, shit, there was water on Mars, so where there's water, there's life. So there was life on Mars, but if it's just bacteria, it's like, well, okay, that's a lot less interesting now. Whereas if there's green people walking around other planets, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's pretty. I think I think that would be a good thing for the general public to know. Um,
yeah,
I'm not a religious guy, but I think that a lot of people that are religious, it would really help them out to have to understand that yeah, there is life outside of. It just makes you. I think it's something that would make people a little bit more worldly, you know, and get them outside of their own tiny little box that they're in, and I find that to be really really important as
yeah,
an adult and as a human being to understand that like we're all on a big ass round spaceship hurtling through the cosmos. Like there are bigger problems, there are bigger things at work.
yeah. Right, I've got another two questions that actually link in with this one pretty well. Is one of them I've just wrote down, Bigfoot. Because like, I think that it is real, because if you think about it logistically, the America has Bigfoot, Australia has the Yowie, and the, oh god, what's it called? People that live near where Everest is and all that have the Yetis,
Yeah,
and then there's all little stories that you hear here and there about them. It's
yeah,
like one of my mates from Ireland has told me that about a story that's down there. It's the giant black gorillas of Ireland, and it's supposedly a 7 foot tall black ape. It just kind of kicks about.
just roams around, hangs out.
Yeah, you might meet him down the pub one night for a pint. Next night he's trying to eat your face off in a bush.
Right, right. Yeah, I have trouble with the Bigfoot thing because people also believe in ghosts, and I sort of and I yeah, things that are we our brains have trouble when they can't explain things,
Yeah,
and it's a coping mechanism, like the way that we're wired to tell stories and to make stories up. And what I would be in, and it's yeah, like I would be interested in if we could find a community of people that have been raised without any of these superstitions, right? They don't know what Bigfoot is, they don't know what any of these things are. If it would be cool to take that tribe of people and put them into situations, right, where they, in air quotes, saw Bigfoot or Yeti or whatever any of these things are, right? It would be interesting to see what those people thought it was, right? Because
yeah,
without that previous bias, it would be cool to see if they're just, oh, that's just a tall guy that didn't get a haircut for a while.
yeah.
Right,
It's
or like
it's one of
I
these
think that would be
things that
interesting.
for like us, it is a, oh yeah, you can just put it down to this is what we know, this is what we've been told about here. But then you get the stories of people from like missions ago, and like a South American tribes telling stories from centuries ago
Yeah.
of this big brown thing. It's
Thing,
like
yeah,
an
exactly.
ape thing, and then the Aboriginals in Australia, it's the same
Yep.
thing over there as well.
Yep.
And it's like, well, the thing that has to be I asked here is because you could add Bigfoot up to megafauna, but if all the other megafauna went extinct, why is that one not?
Yeah, for sure. It's true. It's true.
It's because there was a type of megafauna called, I think it's Gigantopithecus, that is big, fuck off ape thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's the closest thing science has recognised to a Bigfoot, but allegedly they went extinct.
Yeah, I have trouble wrapping my head around the fact that it's still an unknown, right? It feels like there should be with stuff like that, right? And in general, it always feels to me like, well, it's 2021. How do we not have like have we not found it? Right? I think that's like the biggest thing for
Yeah,
me that makes me go like, well, I feel like by this point we would know for sure. So if we don't know, but at the same time, we don't understand how our own brains work yet. Like there is
yeah.
a shocking amount of things that we don't understand in this world, and that could very well be one of them.
And it's weird
Um,
because we're already looking to the stars for all this stuff, right?
yeah, right.
Like we know more about the surface of Mars than we do on our floor of our own oceans. It's like that's just mad to me.
Yeah, we're still finding like literal dinosaurs at the bottom of the ocean,
Yeah,
like in the depths that we can't get down to. It's crazy.
it's the same thing with. I think it's why the Nessie stuck around here for so long. Is because up until recently we've not actually been able to get to the bottom of Loch Ness.
Oh,
Just due to
really?
how
Huh?
deep it is, and there's a massive cave systems
Really?
under the
Oh my
Loch Ness area.
God. That's straight out of the Mandalorian.
So in theory, there could have been when the asteroids and all that came down something because the entirety of the UK was allegedly underwater during this time period.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what's saying that something didn't go in there, and since it's a self-sustaining ecosystem in there,
Yeah, right.
replicated itself.
Or somehow it's just able to live 1,000 years. We don't. Yeah, whales live hundreds and hundreds of years. I
Yeah,
think so do turtles, right?
yeah. It's what
What's to say?
I think the longest living animal on Earth, the Greenland shark, can live something like 600 years.
Yeah, see, it's like, I mean,
Well, it's
it's
what
crazy.
anything that lives in the Arctic and Antarctic lives for centuries just because of the temperature.
Yeah, sure.
It's because it's so cold, the cells can't divide as fast, so they don't
And they just
die.
move nice and slow. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one also links into that one. Have you had any experience yourself that you cannot explain with science?
Oh my God. Interesting.
It's like if you look at something logically, and
Yeah,
it's
and
like
see,
completely.
I'm not a woo-woo person at all.
Yeah.
I my brain always even so even if there was something unexplained, my brain would naturally just explain it or just say this is just how the brain works. It's playing tricks, blah 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 blah. Um, but it's not something it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
There have been moments, but they've always been moments where I've been able to just say, well, if you do something enough times, or right, if the human race gets into a situation enough times, something really crazy could happen, and something really crazy and rare hasn't happened to me in a while. So I'll typically just sort of write it off like that. Um, Yeah, and unfortunately, by doing that, my brain doesn't remember, doesn't right? Because as soon as I justify it as not something
Yeah.
unexplainable, it just leaves my brain because it's just like, oh, that was just the wind coming through the hallway perfectly to push that door open. Um,
Yeah, see, I'm the complete opposite with that. It's like my mind first goes to, well, yeah, it first goes to science and like, is this something that happened there? And then I go to, okay, is this something that can't be explained by science?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and I guess growing up sort of without any formal religion, that also kind of factors into it, right? Because I was never trained to have like this blind faith, this blind belief. Like my whole life has been based around like, hey, what is this? How do we explain this? And then my dad would explain it to me, and then it's like, all right, well, how about this? Let's explain that. And nowadays, it's, I mean, shit, just type anything into Google and you'll get a pretty damn
Yeah,
good explanation. So I think maybe just because because that's my upbringing, it's yeah,
yeah,
I'm able to explain even the unexplainable with just a series of random chants, which there have been moments where I've just been like, well, that's kind of sad in a way, but at the same time, I don't know. I mean, it's only sad if you make it sad, I guess, right?
yeah. It's what. Well, I've never been religious either, and it's just a kind of. I'm not sure if it's more of a cultural thing with, especially here. Well, the further up north you go here, there's still people that are like, you get a Celtic charm, and each of them have their own meaning of what they do,
Sure.
and there's still people here that like fully back that without any thought to it.
Right, right.
But it's like I'm not sure because as I just said, I've never actually been religious or anything. But there's just stuff that I cannot explain in any other way than this. It's like
Right. Yeah.
it's like what a while ago I was sitting in my auntie's garden and we was talking about my granddad, right? And there's this rock sitting on top of this other perfectly flat rock. It's like quite a hefty rock, about a couple 100 grams, right? Like nothing the wind could move. We start talking,
Sure.
we were just talking about other stuff, and we start talking about him for some reason. This rock slides all of 4 or 5 inches off of the other rock and down. There's no way with science I can explain that.
Right. Yeah, see, I guess too. I'll bet I've just never had like an experience that's that obvious, right? Like there's obvious, and then there's like, and I think maybe I just haven't had that, like full on experience where it's like there's no way, like you said, there's just no way to explain that.
Yeah,
I think maybe I just haven't had that like full blown like I'm trying really hard and I have been trying for half an hour to explain this and I can't.
yeah. I guess it's just one of the ways that you have to think about it. Is if you've got a very logical mind, it's always going to be right. Even if I don't know what's going on here, science can explain this somehow.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's a point where you've got to go, well, 100 years ago, if you knew anything about medicine, you were a witch.
Right.
And now we go to those people that we were killing for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Those.
true. It's funny to think about it. It is nice that we allow in current society we allow a little bit of woo woo because it's there's a big crazy world of wonder that brings a lot of people joy,
Yeah,
and like in the grand scheme of things, if you're happy, if you live a happy life that doesn't harm other people or make other people's lives less happy, it's a life well lived.
yeah,
If you spent that life believing in fairy tales, I mean that's fine. That's your choice. If it makes you happy, you're probably in a better place than I am.
yeah. is what I'm not sure about. Where was it that you said that you grew up?
New Jersey, which is just south of New York,
Yeah.
just east of Philadelphia.
Let's see what you. Well, you've got the Jersey Devil.
Yeah. We do. In like I grew up in the suburban region of New
Yeah.
Jersey, southern New Jersey, like an hour south of where I grew up, is where the Jersey Devils is a thing out in the
Yeah.
woods, in the Pine Barrens, they're called.
Yeah. So that's only one I can think of off the top of my head for there. Here we've got Selkies, we've got Kelpies, we've got the Loch Ness Monster. We've got what's it got? Bonnie Summon. That one's more of a folklore tale than a myth or legend, but
Gotcha.
because that one comes for apparently there used to be this family of cannibals that lived somewhere
Oh my god.
in, up in the islands. So it's like apparently they all died out, but now their ghosts will scran you. So it's I reckon that one's more folklore than legend.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's one of the other things. What one of the ancient. Well, it's not one of the ancient Egyptian gods, but it's one that's. Well, I guess the easiest way to explain it's a deity, because
Okay.
canonically in all the Egyptian scripts and stuff, that is an alien, and the way they explained it is somebody that came from the sky.
Okay.
Because that's the best way they had to explain it at the time, and it's
Yeah. Sure.
it's
And it just stuck.
all the tribes and stuff that were affected by the world wars had their they'd explain the planes as a giant metal bird.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny to think about that. We still have there are still a large majority of the planet that are tribal. And yeah, like an airplane to the people that are born there before they learn what it is. It's like, what is that? It's a huge metal bird. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's not? Oh. Well, then what else is it? Must be a metal bird. No,
It's
you
a
see,
big
there's
metal
these
bird that there's
people
people in. It's like,
that go, yeah, and then they're going on this place called the internet that only exists in their minds, but it has every piece of information in human
yeah.
history. Like, it's we use the we say, like, what if aliens came down a lot and saw us and we had to explain life to them, but it's like we don't even have to go there, man. We just have to say, what if we had to explain that to a tribe that just is living on the earth today, struggling to survive, that don't have any technology. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's so humbling sometimes, and I think it's so important to remember that there are people out there today and
Yeah.
tomorrow.
No, I guess one of the weird way to think about it is the way that the internet is. The now we have a lot more than those tribes. We also have some things that they also have some things that we don't. It's like you hear quite
Yeah,
often
very
that,
true.
the people go to tribes and they'll make all these remedies for stuff. It's like for ayahuasca, for example, which is, I'm not sure if you know what it is, but it's a psychedelic, and they mix all the
Yep.
plants together, and the active chemical compound is DMT.
Yep.
And people ask them, like, how do you know how to make that? It's like, they told us. The
Yeah.
plants told us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and it's always interesting when I always notice when I'm watching documentaries where they go to long off land. I always notice, like, how happy the people look, and, like, yeah, okay, they're probably not going to live to be 100 years old, but, like, I don't know. Again, like, I'm so tired of this approach to life of, like, quantity over quality. Like, I have no interest in living to 100 years old unless I'm happy. Like if you know, like
Yeah.
rather I would rather have 40 or 50 or 60 really happy years um, than 100 years of like confusion and pushing other people down and you know all these things that I think modern society has let kind of get a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a systemic thing. It's like, what the hell do we do?
Yeah.
We just keep an eye on it. We just keep an eye on it. And then we just bury it down. That's the lesson that I learned from It's Always Sunny. Dude, you should start watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia if you can get your hands on it. I think that you'll connect with it really well.
Yeah.
And It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia will teach you everything you need to know about me and my sense of humor. Because a couple of people that wrote the show are from Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is a very interesting, dry, sarcastic,
Yeah.
wonderful place where people just kind of don't take shit. Um, yeah,
Well, I think
great show.
one thing that they don't really portray on television here is the humour is quite different as well. It's what
Yeah,
England and Wales has got his own separate types of humour, but then Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's basically the same.
really, that's
It's more of
interesting.
a
Huh.
slapstick type of
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
having a
Yep,
crack
yep, yep,
type of
yep.
thing. That's what I think. One of the best shows to watch for it would either be Still Game or Only Fools and Horses.
What is it?
There's two shows that sum up Scottish and Irish humour very well. It's
Okay,
a Still Game and Only Fools and Horses.
gotcha. I'm gonna check them out.
Yeah.
Oh, I know Still Game. Yep, I know Still Game. I know this. There was a little while that there was a VPN service available on PlayStation, and you could you could spoof different parts of the world, and
Yeah.
Netflix has completely different um,
Yeah, it's got all
offerings
the
in different
pre-locked
regions.
content.
And we used to go to the to the England region, and I specifically remember this main actor being in the thumbnails. We might even have watched some of Still Game. What was the second one?
Only Fools and Horses.
There it is. Yep, I recognize that one too. I recognize that the the younger actor was in something else that I know that we've watched. I
Yeah.
don't think we've seen this, but I recognize that actor. That's hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've only got two questions left for you. So,
Shoot.
what's your favourite band?
It's got to be Led Zeppelin. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up listen. They were one of the. I think they were the first rock band, like actual, just straight up classic rock, just rock band that I ever
Yeah, what,
found.
like hair rock?
Yeah. Well, see, what's interesting is we like to me, they're straight up classic rock. Um, I consider hair rock more like '80s, like getting into the '80s. Um,
Yes, what would you say
yeah,
that's like Guns N' Roses and
that's getting closer to more hair rock for me. I don't
yeah,
know if I would. I guess yeah, Guns N' Roses is hair rock, isn't it? They're-
yeah. So I'd say hair rock's more Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi.
yeah, 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 yeah. Totally, totally. I sometimes I call that cock rock,
Yeah, it's just
but not
more.
really. Not that I don't love it. It's
Yeah,
just it was that time period.
yeah. I find it interesting to see how music's developed since then.
Oh
Because you
my
started
god.
with what probably things changed at Led Zeppelin. Then they changed again with Guns N' Roses. Then the next one to change was probably Nirvana,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it's all synthesized and played on a
You know, it's
computer
funny
now.
for whatever reason, Kristen and I last night were watching something, and they played a clip of a of a big concert in a big concert space, and it kind of like hit me all at once that like we might that might be it. Like we might never have big concerts again
Yeah.
if the virus keeps mutating like this. And it was like I got really emotional at the thought, not only the thought that we won't have any we might not have any big concerts like that, but also like just the state of music and how music has changed. I remember what it was. So there's a YouTube channel called Twins New Trend. It's these two guys that it's these two kids that listen to all this music that they've never heard before, and you get like their first reaction to it, and it's
Yeah.
hysterical. And they were playing a Foo Fighters song, which is a really great example of '90s rock, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd say Foo
and
Fighters more indie than rock.
oh yeah, true, very true. Um, but it was it just hit me so hard. Like music was so good, and like I feel like the '90s and like the somewhat into the 2000s was like sort of the death blow
Yeah.
of what I think a lot of us consider to be really good music. And I mean, we still get good music now, but it's just so different. It's a lot. I don't know. It feels a lot less pure maybe than it used to be. It just
Yeah, it's because most of it is just synthetic.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's what.
which I'm okay with. I'm okay with it being synthetic, but I don't know. I just think it was more. You had to be more naturally talented at like performance back then,
Yeah.
almost. Whereas now, that time that they used to put into performance needs to be put into like basically marketing, right? Like social
Yeah.
media and all this other shit that they have to do in order to make a name for themselves. And like I don't know, I think that just makes it less pure in a way.
Yeah, well, it's a good one that I found recently is Youngblood.
I have not heard of them.
Well, it's this guy that just it's not really you can't really
Look
say
at these guys.
a genre. It is well the thing. I'm not sure if you've just found a picture from a music video from another band that's got a song called Youngblood, but this is one person.
Oh, okay. Yep, I did. I did. That was the
Uh,
song name.
and it's like they just one thing I think like about them is they just do them.
Okay.
It's
Are they
they
from
want to make a
Sweden?
rap song. No, they're from Doncaster in England.
Okay.
Um, it's they just do them. They want to make a rap song. They'll make a rap song. They want to make a punk song. They make a punk song.
Okay. I got him. Born in 1997. Gee. These young guys, dude. What are we gonna do about this?
Well, what one thing that I'm seeing happening quite a lot now is instead of the this older instead of all this rap, we're kind of starting to go full circle now because now a lot of the rappers have started doing rock style music.
Sure. Yeah. It's true.
And it's like it's like it's coming back now.
Yeah. Yeah. They're getting bored. They're running out of ideas.
But a lot of it is like they've done this, but they've still managed to make it really original.
Yeah, that's important, man. It's so hard to do, but it is. Yeah, it's like you have to. You got to figure out a way to do that.
Yes, but now we've got all the cookie cutter pop stars that are just
Yeah.
all. It's what most songs now have got 4 chords in them.
Yep.
They've got what C, A, D, and G. With those 4 chords, I can play like 20 songs.
Yep. Although you can say the same thing about a lot of classic rock songs.
Yeah, but the way that they done it is they would have, and that's a different type of the chord as well. It's like the classic rock was because there's only so much that you can do because there's only what 6 A B C D E F G 7 letters in the musical alphabet.
Yeah.
but at least with classic rock, they'd be using like a C add 9 instead of just C.
Okay.
Like there's 100 different variations of each chord, and they'd use all of them instead of just the C major, D major, G major, and A major.
Yeah.
That's what they use now, because the human ear likes what it knows, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So, if we make all the songs similar enough that they still have this, you know, the same almost sound, but
Yep.
different enough that people will listen to it, and it's more of turned into that other than
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. It's like we've gotten so deep into music theory that we've like figured out the mathematical formula basically
yeah,
to make hits. It's weird to think about, but at the same time, I mean, it was of course it's gonna happen, right?
yeah.
Like we're doing that with everything. Um,
Well, it's
it's
one of the
just
things
weird. It feels so disingenuine.
it's one of the things I didn't understand is in school here they taught us instead of how to write, you know, modern music, they taught us how to write classical music,
Hmm.
and like that's what we needed to pass exams.
Right.
Other than all the songs we had to listen to pass our exams were Beethoven and Bach
Right.
and all that.
Hmm. Which, like, on one hand, they are like I try to tell myself, well, those are the foundational things, and I mean that's how mankind moved through music. But at the flip side of that is like, well, we can condense that. Can't we condense that a little bit more? But I guess we sort of are, right? I mean, we think of like a class in school as a big thing, but like it's only what 45 minutes a day. It's not
Yeah,
that much time, all things considered. Like especially when I look at like piloting, like how many thousands of hours it took me to get to this point as a pilot. Like
yeah,
if I paid a couple $1,000s for a college class on how to be a pilot, I'd be a shitty pilot at the end of that class. But I would at least hopefully have the foundations to.
yeah,
It's yeah, it's interesting. The education is a tough thing, especially because when I was a kid, I just didn't want anything to do with it. But now that I'm older, it's like I just thrive on it and just want more and more and more of it.
yeah. Feel right. That's the question I've got for you.
Dude,
Right.
love it, man.
If I was to do one of these again, who do you think would be good to do it on?
Oh man, anybody that you can get, you just have to do it. You just have to do it over and over and over. You're in that point where it's just all repetition.
Yeah,
Um, that my first like when I look back at the first Christ like 6 months of streams, it was it's brutal. I'm just like, what the fuck was I doing? But I mean, it was just making the mistakes. It was just forcing myself into a situation where I would make the mistakes, and then
yeah.
yeah, try to make the mistake a little bit less next time, a little bit less next time, and then eventually
Oh,
I
sure.
wasn't making that mistake anymore. I was making 18 other mistakes that I could then focus on. But yeah, I think at the moment for you, man, just like anybody willing to talk to you, um,
Yeah. I was thinking
and
to
people
try
will
get.
be.
Yeah, I was thinking to try to get somebody that we do really know nothing about, like Super Deluxe or
Yeah, hell yeah, totally.
uh,
Shit, just go through the moderators in the chat. You know what I mean? Like I've made people moderators for a reason,
yeah,
and they would probably all love to do it. Super Deluxe, I can pretty much guarantee you would be psyched to do it.
yeah. See if I can find him on Discord. Then I'll.
Yeah, he's a cool dude too. He's a super cool dude.
Have you seen
Yeah,
what
dude, I
his
would love to
Discord
hear
bio
that
was?
too.
Have you seen what his Discord bio was? It's great. Fuck the
Uh,
FPV.
yeah. Yeah, there's probably some cool cats over on Bot Stream too that would love to do it as well. He's got a
Yeah,
bunch of guys in his stream that have a little bit of a presence.
yeah. Maybe one day I'll be at the point where I can interview Bot himself.
Hell yeah. He's a super down to earth guy, man. If you 10 or 15 of these, I bet you he would say hell yeah.
Yeah,
Because he is at a point where like if you ask him, he's gonna look you up, to see
yeah,
what you're up to. But yeah, I mean, if he sees you doing a bunch of these with Super Deluxe and me and a bunch of other guys, not it would not surprise me even a little bit
yeah,
if he'd be super into it.
yeah. I feel like Bot he'd be great to do it on, but he'd be hard to do it on as well because he's so
Yeah,
open about everything.
yeah, yeah. You would definitely want a strong list of questions
Yeah,
to keep things wrangled in. Although I don't know, I've spent a good amount of time with him, just like conversationally as just a friend, and
yeah,
he puts it on quite a bit for the live stream. So do I. When I'm the live streams are me performing a little
yeah. It's
bit.
a character.
I'm a lot more low key uh, around friends, more so now than ever before, to be honest,
Yeah,
because I have to be on for a couple hours a day every day on the streams. It's really nice to go completely opposite of that and just like not like literally I have to just not talk sometimes. Like
yeah,
they'll just be like, all right, I'm gonna spend 2 hours. I'm not gonna say a word, and I'll tell Kristen like hey, this is like it's not you. I'm not mad at you. I promise. Like I just need to not talk for a while right now and just
yeah.
absorb things.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I love just being known as Weirdo instead of who I actually am. Because especially now that
Nice.
I'm doing these, I can put it's like Weirdo's a character.
Yeah. Totally.
It's like I'll put on something. No, I'll put on a character, or
Right.
talk
Right.
in chats, or do stuff like this, just so it's more interesting.
For sure.
Because like me as a person, I'm quite boring.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, dude, totally. I get it. I totally get it. I agree. I agree. And I yeah, I feel the same way. Like outside of FPV, I don't want to be extraordinary. I just want to like live. I just want to be boring. Just let me be
Yeah,
boring. It's funny.
yeah,
I dig it, man.
yeah. Well, actually, now that you said that, I've just thought of another one. What do you?
Sure.
What's like? Well, at least before the whole pandemic thing, what was part of your day to day outside of FPV that's like not anything to do related with that?
Like hobby related or just life
Yeah,
related?
just anything.
I don't talk much about. I mentioned my career as a
Yeah,
project manager every so often, but I've really talked about it. Uh, yeah, it's I was a I was pretty heavily in the corporate world. I mean, I was like a drone for you know in
yeah,
in the not interesting way for a long time, and that's what I thought life was. I've had the approach for a long up until FPV um, that the best way for me to live my life, the way that I wanted to live it, was to suffer through a job for 8 hours a day where I made sort of as much money as I could. I mean, like
yeah,
realistically, yeah, as much money as I could. Not saying that as like somebody that could make $250,000 or anything like that. Right? Saying that as someone like the most money I was ever able to make in my
yeah,
career was 80 a year. That's a ton of money in the grand scheme of things. Not to a lot of people, it's not a lot of money, but to even more people, it is, especially outside of the U.S. It
yeah,
is a huge amount of money. Um, and I almost did that as a way of trying to keep burnout under control because I'd been through a bunch of these hobbies,
yeah,
drumming and airsoft, and um, some smaller hobbies, and I'd sort of driven them into the ground. And like photography, for example, um, I tried to do that a little bit more professionally, and I ended
yeah,
up just sort of driving it into the ground and not wanting to do it anymore. And so I had this thing in my head where I was like, well, okay, so I can't do these things professionally, and that's fine. I can put my 8 hours in, make the money, be able to live, and then I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 extra hours per day
yeah,
to put into a hobby, and that's a good amount of time. Um, in the last year, I've learned what's possible by changing that 2 or 3 or 4 hours into 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day. Um, and that's been really interesting. But yeah, I mean, before that, like I had 15 plus years into
yeah,
like corporate sales jobs, and then when I got totally burned out on sales, I moved over to project management, which is all project management really is okay. You're done with the salesperson, but there's some reason for us to keep talking to you. That's
yeah,
my job. You've given us a bunch of your money, and we're working on your stuff, or you're paying a monthly fee, and we're continuing to work on your stuff. And it's just communicating. I mean, it's really, I'm really good at it because I can communicate like pretty accurately and pretty quickly with people, and that really helps me out in FPV, and it's one of the reasons that I'm so excited to keep doing more and more of, hopefully keep doing more and more of the instruction and the tuning help and
yeah,
on all the stuff that I have up on Fiverr. That's really what I'm most excited about, because I really want to get the the only like dream that I actually have is get the FPV instructor thing
yeah,
sort of off the ground, and being the Joshua Bardwell of FPV flight instruction,
yeah.
basically.
That's got to be like a great thing for him to know that when somebody talks about doing something FPV, you want to be the Bardwell of
Yeah,
this
right.
particular. I feel
Yeah,
like that's
that's
got to be like a great feeling for him.
yeah, I agree. I wonder if he struggles with um sort of a version of imposter syndrome with that, because
Yeah,
that strikes me as something that could very kind of like get to your head.
yeah.
Um Interesting to kind of think about it, that
I mean, yeah, they
a
do say
place
it's
where I would
hard
have
to
to
be at the
consider
top,
that,
isn't
but
it?
good problem to have, I guess, though.
Yeah. So back to what you were saying a minute ago is that's something that I never want to have. Working 8 hours a day and waiting for the weekend.
Yeah,
Like working for the weekend instead of working for working.
yeah, yeah, very true. It's
Yeah,
tough. It's tough because typically the jobs where you make really good money are the ones that sort of require that, right? Like
yeah,
it kind of comes back to that like nothing's free sort of mentality. But um,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you work hard enough at something you love, you can definitely turn it into something. But you got to be really careful, and you got to really be eyes open with it, because it's just, for me specifically, it's just so easy to burn it out and just drive it
yeah,
into the dirt. So it's a really weird sort of balance, but I don't know. I feel like I may have sort of kind of figured it out. I hope.
yeah,
We'll find out.
yeah, yeah. No, what you're saying with that one. See, this is about to get about 2 hours, so that's about a good time to wrap up, innit?
Sounds good, man.
Yeah. And the
Super
unlikely
fun.
chance, yeah, and the unlikely chance that anyone goes back and watches this, anything you want to plug?
ciottifpv.com, man. That's I've got all the fun stuff that I'm doing up there, all the different ways that people can support me. Um, and yeah, just come on over to the live streams every day for patrons.
Yeah,
Uh, and then for the actual everyone, Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays.
yeah, yeah. now is the question: how do I stop this thing?
Are you in OBS
Streamlabs.
or Streamlabs? There should be a stop streaming button on the right side.
It was just in the. It's just off the.
But then you're also gonna have to go to YouTube and hit end stream in YouTube.
Right. Cool. How do I do that one?
Basically, when you stop the stream on OBS, you know, I've actually never seen it do it, but apparently when you stop the stream in OBS, it brings up for everybody a little circular waiting symbol, and then when you hit stop and when you hit end stream on YouTube, that's when it actually ends the stream. So I've been told. I've never actually seen it happen.
Yeah, I think I've got mine set so that if I just hit end stream, it just ends on its own.
Nice.